What happens when a live morning show, a studio full of unsuspecting audience members, and one of Hollywood's most emotionally raw actresses collide in a moment no one saw coming? Before we dive into the unraveling that took place inside that brightly lit studio, make sure you subscribe to Stage View, hit that like button, and drop a comment. It helps us bring you more explosive stories just like this one. The cameras were already rolling when Florence Pugh stepped onto the set of The View, dressed in a muted cream suit that didn't match the wildfire simmering behind her eyes. She greeted the hosts with a warm, almost too controlled smile. Still, something about her energy made the room lean in. Even the audience, usually quick to clap and cheer, responded with an oddly hesitant applause, as if they could sense something brewing beneath the surface. Whoopi Goldberg straightened the cards in her hands with a subtle frown, the kind she wore whenever she picked up an emotional tremor before anyone else. She'd been doing this long enough to know when a celebrity came in with a storm tucked behind their composure. "Florence, welcome back," Whoopi said. "It's always good to have you." Florence's lips curled upward, but her voice wavered just slightly. "Thanks. I'm glad to be here." The pause between the "I" and the "I'm glad" was so thin most people would miss it. Joy Behar didn't. She leaned forward, eyebrows raised. "You okay, honey? You look like you haven't slept." Florence let out a breath through her nose, quick and controlled. "It's been a long week." A few soft chuckles rose from the audience, unsure whether to treat the comment as sarcasm or confession. But Florence wasn't joking. You could see it in the tiny tremor of her fingertips as she adjusted the sleeve of her blazer. Sarah Haynes jumped in with her usual upbeat tone, trying to lighten the mood. "Well, we're excited to talk about your new film. It's already generating a lot of buzz." Florence nodded, but her jaw tightened, barely but visibly, at the mention of the film. That was the first real warning. Whoopi lowered her cards. "Florence, look, before we get into any of that, we can talk about anything you're comfortable with. If something else is going on, you can say so." Florence blinked rapidly, as if steadying herself. Her voice dropped, quieter than expected. No. Let's just talk." But the attempt at normalcy collapsed the moment Sunny Hostin asked, gently but directly, "Is it true the studio pushed you into reshoots because they didn't like the direction you were taking the character?" A ripple of discomfort shivered across the room. Whoopi shot Sunny a look that said, "You're diving in early today, huh?" Florence froze. For half a second. Then the mask cracked. "They didn't push me into anything," she said, her voice suddenly sharp. "They demanded it. They said the character was too unsettling, too emotional, too everything that actually made her real." The audience murmured in confusion, alert now, sensing the pressure rising. Joy raised her hands. "Hey, we're not trying to stir the pot." "But that's the problem, isn't it?" Florence snapped, cutting her off. "Everyone thinks I'm being dramatic or difficult, or whatever headline they want to print. But nobody asks why." Whoopi's eyes widened, just for a heartbeat, before she leaned back, locking her gaze on Florence as if preparing for a detonation. "Florence," she said slowly, "you know we respect you here. But if you're saying there's more to this." "There's so much more," Florence said, her voice shaking now. Not from anger, but from something deeper, more fragile. "But no one wants to hear the truth. They want the performance. They want the smiling actress who says everything is fine, even when it's not." A hush settled over the room, so thick it was almost physical. Even the stage crew had stopped moving. Sarah tried to intervene, speaking in that gentle tone of someone reaching out to steady a wobbling glass. "We're hearing you. Really. Can you tell us what's happening?" Florence looked at her, and her eyes glistened. "I don't know if I can without being torn apart for it." Another murmur from the audience, softer this time, sympathetic. Whoopi leaned forward, elbows on the table, tone low and deliberate. "This table is safe, Florence. You don't owe anyone a performance today." Florence swallowed hard. For a moment, she looked like she might break entirely. The cameras zoomed in, catching every flicker across her expression. The fear, the exhaustion, the simmering resentment. And then she exhaled shakily. "I've been dealing with a lot behind the scenes. Pressure. Control. People twisting things. I've been told to tone it down, to be more palatable. I've been told I'm too much for months now." Sarah's brow furrowed. "Too much? Emotionally?" "No," Florence said, her voice cracking. "Too much as a person." Several audience members gasped. A few whispered to their neighbors. Sunny leaned in. "Who said that to you?" Florence opened her mouth, closed it, then shook her head. "I can't, not yet." Whoopi took a deep breath, her eyes steady. You're not here to be perfect. You're here to be human. Something about those words hit Florence like a blow. Her shoulders dropped as though a weight had been loosened. But her voice, when she spoke again, came out barely controlled. I thought I could handle everything. The film. The press. The expectations. But I'm drowning. The audience reacted audibly this time. A mix of shock, empathy, and a collective "oh no" uttered under their breath. A camera angle cut to a woman in the front row putting a hand over her mouth, eyes wide. Joy rose slightly from her seat. "Sweetie, do you need a moment?" Florence shook her head, though tears brimmed dangerously close. "No. I'm tired of stepping away. I'm tired of hiding." Whoopi, stunned but anchored, nodded slowly. "Okay, then let's take this one step at a time." But Florence wasn't done. If anything, the dam had only begun to crack. These studios, these executives, they talk about authenticity. They want real stories. They want raw portrayals. But the moment an actress shows real emotion, real struggle, suddenly she's unstable. Difficult. Hard to work with. Joy's eyes widened. "Are you saying they targeted you?" Florence hesitated. And it was that hesitation, that trembling pause, that set the audience on edge. Every pair of eyes in that room locked on her. "Targeted," she whispered. "Or punished. I don't even know anymore." You could practically hear the tension crawling along the studio walls. Sonny spoke carefully. "Florence, are you okay right now?" For the first time, Florence didn't answer immediately. She pressed her palm against her forehead, eyes squeezed shut, breath quivering. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded scraped raw. "I don't know." The audience gasped as one. Even Whoopi's face shifted, concern overtaking shock. Whoopi raised a hand gently. "Let's pause for a second." But before she could signal for a break, Florence's voice rose again, louder this time, cracking under pressure. "No, you don't get it." She looked at the hosts, at the cameras, at the sea of stunned faces. "I came here to talk about a movie. And instead, I'm realizing I can't keep pretending I'm fine." With that, her voice broke entirely. She clasped her hands together tightly, fighting the tremble, but it wasn't working. "I feel like I'm disappearing," she whispered. "And nobody notices until I'm sitting under studio lights." The audience erupted, not in noise, but in total, suffocating silence. Whoopi's jaw tightened. She had expected vulnerability, but not a full collapse, not this raw unraveling happening live, unplanned, unstoppable. Joy whispered, barely audible, "Oh my God." And that's when it happened, the moment that would be clipped, replayed, analyzed, shared, and dissected across the internet within minutes. Florence's voice rose, ragged and emotional. "I'm so tired of being told who to be. I'm tired of being edited. Erased. Controlled. I'm tired of being everyone's idea of Florence Pugh except my own." The studio froze. Whoopi's eyes widened in stunned silence, a look that would become the iconic image of the entire incident. The air inside the studio shifted, not gradually, but instantly, like the atmosphere after a sudden lightning strike. Florence's words still vibrated in the space between her and the hosts, echoing in the minds of every person watching. A studio audience is usually a warm, reactive crowd, trained to respond, clap, laugh, gasp. But now, they sat frozen, watching an emotional rupture unfold with the unblinking intensity of witnesses to a moment that could not be undone. Florence pressed her palms flat against the table as though grounding herself. Her breath shook. Her face flushed. Her eyes glistened under the harsh studio lighting that revealed too much. Every tremor, every crack in composure, every emotion she could no longer bury. Whoopi was the first to move. Slowly, cautiously, she leaned forward, her voice low and steady. "Florence, just breathe. You're okay. We're right here." But Florence didn't look at her. Instead, she stared at a spot on the table, as if afraid her own gaze might unravel everything else holding her together. Joy cleared her throat, faltering between wanting to diffuse tension and not wanting to minimize what was unfolding. "Look, sweetie, nobody expects you to be perfect. You don't have to unpack everything if you're not ready." Florence's head jerked up at that. "But that's the thing," she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of frustration and despair. "I have to be perfect. All the time. Everyone expects it. Every studio. Every director. Every reporter. Every fan." She swallowed hard. "I'm tired. I'm tired of walking into rooms where people talk about me like I'm a thing they need to manage." A woman in the audience covered her mouth. Another reached for her friend's hand. A man shook his head slowly, whispering, "This is rough." Sunny leaned forward, tone soft. Florence, you're not a thing. You're a person. And what you're saying matters. It matters a lot. Florence blinked rapidly, emotion pooling again. Does it? Because every time I open my mouth, someone tells me it would be better if I said less. Or said it prettier. Or said it with a smile. Whoopi sighed, her voice dropping into that deep, resonant register she used only when something serious was happening. Baby, that's not your burden to carry alone. And nobody is asking you to smile right now. But even as Whoopi spoke, a new tension rippled across Florence's expression. Something sharper, more pointed, as if a thought had cut through her like a blade. You know what the worst part is? She asked, voice quiet but piercing. They tell me I'm too emotional. But that emotion is literally what I'm hired for. They want it on screen. They want pain that feels real. They want breakdowns that look authentic. They clap for the performance. But when the emotion leaks into my real life, suddenly it's unprofessional. Suddenly I'm unstable. The audience murmured again, louder this time, the discomfort palpable. Joy exhaled, shifting in her seat. Well, you know Hollywood. They always want. No, Florence cut in, shaking her head with a force that startled everyone. No, Joy. It's not Hollywood. It's people. Real people making these decisions. Real people comparing me to others. Real people telling me I should be grateful I even have a say. Whoopi raised her eyebrows. Who's telling you that? Florence's lips parted, then pressed together. She hesitated, and in that hesitation the room braced. Sunny leaned forward, her voice gentle but steady. Florence, if someone in the studio system is hurting you, manipulating you, or threatening your career, you're not alone. You can talk about it. Florence inhaled sharply, her breath shaking so violently it almost seemed painful. I can't name them, she whispered. Not yet. You know how it goes. One accusation, and suddenly you're blacklisted. I've already been warned. Warned? Sarah asked, shocked. By who? Florence looked down, her hands twisting together. People who said they were trying to help me. People who said they were protecting my future. Joy's eyes widened. Are you saying someone threatened your career? Florence laughed once, a brittle, broken sound. Only every week. A collective gasp swept the room, almost synchronized. Even the camera operator, usually stoic, whispered Jesus under his breath. Whoopi leaned forward. You don't have to go into detail, but we're listening. We're here. Florence's gaze flicked to her, and something inside her seemed to fracture further. Do you know what it feels like, Whoopi? To be gaslit by an entire team of people who claim they're on your side? To be told you're being overly sensitive when you're literally begging them to stop rewriting everything you say or do. Florence's voice cracked, the kind of break that shakes a person from the inside. To have your boundaries dismissed because you're just the actress and they're the ones with the power? Whoopi's eyes softened. Yeah, she said quietly. I do. Florence froze. Her eyes lifted slowly, disbelievingly, to meet Whoopi's. And Whoopi didn't look away. The audience felt something shift, a subtle current of solidarity threading between them. Florence's breath hitched. Then why does it keep happening? She whispered. Why does every woman in this industry have a story like this? The studio fell painfully silent. Sunny's voice wavered slightly. It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen to anyone. And you speaking about it, even vaguely, is courageous. But Florence shook her head again, more forcefully now. No, I'm tired of being called brave. I don't want to be brave. I want to be safe. That line hit the audience like a cannon blast. Several people gasped. One woman audibly whispered, "Oh my God." Florence continued, voice trembling with rising emotion. I want to go to work without feeling like someone's waiting for me to break. I want to do interviews without being told what answers will keep everyone happy. I want to be allowed to be human without it becoming a headline. Joy raised a hand, palm out. Florence, listen. None of us are trying to push you over the edge here. Florence snapped her attention to Joy, her voice cracking in frustration. But don't you see? I'm already over the edge. The audience flinched. Joy leaned back, startled, lips pressing together. Florence's hands were shaking visibly now. She wiped at her cheek, not with embarrassment, but with a kind of desperate anger. I didn't come here to blow up. I didn't plan this. But I'm sick of pretending everything is fine when it's not. Sarah nodded slowly. We get that. We do. But you don't have to force anything out of yourself right now. You can take a breath. You can pause. We can come back. No, Florence said softly, but the firmness was unmistakable. If I stop now, I'll never say it. Sunny looked at her carefully. Say what? Florence inhaled shakily. Her voice wavered but did not break. That I'm exhausted from being handled like a product instead of a person. That every insecurity I've ever had has been magnified by people who claim to know what's best for me. That I'm surrounded by people who call themselves protectors, but every decision benefits them more than me. Her lips trembled. I feel controlled. A chill swept the room. Joy blinked, stunned. Controlled how? Florence shook her head, eyes glistening again. You wouldn't believe me. Whoopi leaned back, her voice calm but firm. You'd be surprised what I'd believe. Florence let out a trembling laugh. Maybe. For a moment, she looked like she might stop there, like she might take a breath, reel it back in, regain composure. But then she whispered something that changed everything. They told me if I talked about any of this, I'd lose everything. Joy gasped audibly. Sarah's hand flew to her chest. Sunny inhaled sharply. Whoopi's face hardened, eyes sharp, jaw set. Who told you that? Florence looked down. People who have too much power over my career. The silence was suffocating. A camera zoomed in on her trembling hands. Another caught Whoopi's stunned expression. The same expression that would soon become the thumbnail of every news clip covering this interview. Florence exhaled shakily, tears finally slipping down her cheeks. I don't want to be scared anymore. She looked up, and her eyes, fierce with vulnerability, locked onto the host's. I'm done being silent. The audience reacted, a wave of gasps, whispers, breathless tension that filled every inch of the room. Whoopi swallowed, visibly shaken. Then say what you need to say, she said softly. We're here now. Florence opened her mouth. But no sound came out at first. Her throat worked, struggling against the weight of everything she'd kept quiet for months. The studio lights glared down on her, harsh and unrelenting, amplifying the vulnerability in her expression. Every camera lens pointed at her felt like another pair of eyes, waiting, watching, expecting. Finally, she exhaled, a thin, trembling breath, and the words spilled out like something she could no longer restrain. It started with notes, she said quietly. Little comments. Suggestions. She swallowed hard. Then they became demands. Joy's eyebrows knitted together. Demands in what way? Florence stared at her hands, fingers twisting together so tightly her knuckles whitened. Demands about how I should act, how I should speak, what I should wear, what emotions were acceptable, which interviews I could do, which ones I couldn't. Her voice cracked. What parts of myself I needed to hide. The audience responded with a wave of murmurs, some sympathetic, some shocked, all deeply invested. Sarah leaned forward, voice soft. That sounds like more than just professional guidance. Florence let out a laugh that wasn't a laugh at all. It was brittle, broken. Guidance? No, this was control. The kind you don't notice at first because it's disguised as advice. We're just trying to help you. We're protecting your image. This is how stars are made. Her breath shook. But over time, it becomes your whole life. Every decision, every movement, every smile. Sunny gently asked, Who's doing this? Your team. Florence inhaled sharply, and that single breath electrified the room. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She just closed her eyes, and that silence was louder than any answer. Whoopi's face darkened, a look caught somewhere between anger and heartbreak. Florence, this is serious. I know, she whispered, barely able to meet her eyes. But every time I've tried to talk about it, even just a little, someone tells me I'm overreacting, or ungrateful, or that I should just do what I'm told and everything will stay on track. Her breathing quickened again, shallow, panicked. Joy raised a hand, voice cautious. Are you saying there's someone in your inner circle, someone you work with closely, who's manipulating you? Florence's eyes flicked up quickly, a flash of fear, then resignation. There are several, but one in particular. Joy held her breath. Sarah tensed. Sunny leaned forward. The audience leaned as one. Florence swallowed. Her voice lowered to a fragile whisper. He told me I'd never work again if I stepped out of line. The audience erupted, gasps, whispers, scattered shouts of what? And that's insane. Whoopi froze completely, her eyes wide with shock. It was the kind of shocked stillness that sent a jolt through the entire room. Sunny's jaw dropped. Florence, someone threatened you? Explicitly? Florence nodded, slow and defeated. He said I'm replaceable. That actresses my age come and go. That I should be thankful anyone cares what I think at all. And if I want to keep working, I need to trust him. Do things his way. No questions. Sarah covered her mouth. That's not guidance. That's control, Whoopi finished, her voice firm, steely. That's abuse. Florence's lips quivered, but she didn't argue. The audience grew restless, a mix of outrage, disbelief, and protective sympathy. A woman in the back called out, "Leave him." Another shouted, "Name him." The producers immediately waved for quiet. Whoopi ignored the commotion. She leaned closer, eyes locked on Florence. "Honey, do you feel safe right now?" Florence exhaled shakily. "Not really." Joy blinked, stunned. "Not here. Or not in general." Florence hesitated, then said both. The entire studio reacted as one, a sharp inhale, like a collective heart skipping a beat. Sarah's voice softened to a whisper. "You shouldn't feel unsafe here. You're not alone." Florence's eyes shimmered again. "I know, but when someone has power over everything, your work, your image, your future, you start feeling unsafe everywhere." The audience murmured in heartbreak and outrage, unable to contain themselves. Sunny gently pressed on. "Florence, did he do something recently? Something that made things worse?" Florence hesitated again. Then she nodded. The room went still. "He threatened to release private messages," she whispered. "Ones where I told him I was struggling, that I needed a break, that I was overwhelmed." Her voice cracked. "He said it would make me look weak, unhinged. He said the public would eat me alive." Joy's hand went to her chest. "Oh my God!" Florence wiped a tear quickly, almost angrily. "I told him I wanted out, that I didn't want him managing me anymore. And he said—" She broke off, looking down. Then she forced the words out, each one heavy. "He said I'd never escape him." The audience reacted violently, gasps, a low chorus of "no," and scattered exclamations of disgust. The crew looked at each other, unsure if they should be rolling a commercial break or letting the moment continue. But Florence wasn't done. "And the worst part? I believed him. I believed every word. I thought maybe he's right. Maybe I'm nothing without the people who make me." Whoopi shook her head, her voice trembling with anger that wasn't directed at Florence. "That's what abusers do. They make you think your success belongs to them. It does not." Florence swallowed, eyes lifting slowly, glassy and pleading. "Then why do I feel like I owe him everything?" Sunny leaned forward, her voice gentle but intense. "Because he conditioned you to think that. But Florence, you don't owe anyone your peace or your freedom." The words hit her hard. Her breath hitched, a small, sharp sound. Florence opened her mouth to speak again, but her voice failed. She brought a trembling hand to her face, pressing her fingers against her eyes as tears finally slipped free. The audience fell silent, not out of discomfort, but out of respect, witnessing a young woman unravel in real time. Whoopi rose slightly from her seat, her voice low. "Florence, you're in danger of breaking down completely on national television. You don't have to keep going. We can cut to break." But Florence lowered her hand, wiped her face, and shook her head. "No, I'm tired of running. I'm tired of hiding. I want to finish this." Whoopi sank back slowly, eyes locked on her, shocked, concerned, but understanding. Joy whispered, "Then say what you came here to say." Florence inhaled, shaky but determined. "I came here because I thought I could handle pretending everything was fine." She paused. "But now I realize the pretending is killing me." The audience was completely still. Florence lifted her chin. "And I won't let him control me anymore." The room erupted, but not in noise. In a shocked, breathless silence that felt like the air had been sucked out of the studio. Sunny stared at her. "Florence, are you saying you're going to expose him?" Florence didn't blink. "Yes." Whoopi's eyes widened in a flash of genuine shock, the kind that would go viral in minutes. Joy whispered, "This is huge." Florence nodded. "I'm done being afraid." And just as the tension reached its peak, just as the audience held its breath, waiting for the name, the confession, the explosion, a voice from off-camera shouted, "Cut! Cut! We need a break." Everyone turned. A frantic producer waved his arms, signaling the cameras to stop, but the cameras were still rolling. The hosts looked stunned. The audience erupted in confused whispers. Florence stared at the producer with wide, betrayed eyes. The producer's shout sliced through the studio like a blade, jolting everyone out of the spell they'd been under. The audience flinched. The hosts turned, startled. The cameras hesitated for half a second, just long enough for the tension to thicken, before the red lights above each lens dimmed. But the damage was already done. Florence sat frozen, staring at the frantic producer who'd burst into frame. His headset was askew, his eyes wide with panic, and he was waving urgently at the crew to cut the feed. Go to commercial. Now! Now, he barked. The audience erupted into whispers. What's happening? Is this real? Are they trying to shut her up? But even with the cameras technically off, the moment lived on in the room, raw, electric, unstoppable. Whoopi rose from her seat, a rare sight that sent another wave of murmurs through the crowd. Hey, she said sharply, addressing the producer. You need to calm down. The producer, breathless, shook his head. We can't air this. We can't. Legal is already calling my phone. We have to stop her. Florence flinched at that word. Stop her. It hit her exactly the way he didn't intend, like the final confirmation of everything she'd said. She stood abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. Every head snapped toward her. Stop me? She repeated, her voice trembling but unmistakably fierce. You're doing it again. You're trying to silence me. The producer threw his hands up. This isn't about you. Yes, it is, she shouted, and the studio went silent. It's always about me when it comes to controlling what I can say, what I can share, what I'm allowed to feel. Joy stood halfway, unsure whether to intervene or give her space. Florence, sweetie, let's all take a breath, okay? But Florence wasn't breathing. Not really. Her chest rose and fell too quickly, her eyes glossy with adrenaline and fury. No, she said firmly. No more deep breaths. No more breaks. No more pretending everything's okay. Her voice gained force, clarity. I'm done letting people decide what parts of my truth are acceptable. Sarah approached carefully, palms up as if trying not to spook a frightened animal. We hear you, but there are procedures. The show. What about my procedure? Florence snapped. What about my life? My safety? Why does a show's schedule matter more than what I've been living through? The audience burst into claps, hesitant at first, then louder, building into a rumble of support. Florence turned toward them, startled by the reaction. Tears filled her eyes again, but this time they weren't just from fear. They were from release. Whoopi stepped closer, placing a gentle but steady hand on her shoulder. Listen to me, she said, eyes locking with hers. You are not going to be shut down. Not here. Not today. Not on my watch. Florence's breath wavered, but she held the host's gaze. The producer paced anxiously behind the cameras, muttering into his headset. Get legal. Lock the control room. Nobody cuts the feed back on until I say so. The audience heard every word, and their reaction shifted, from confusion to irritation, from irritation to outright anger. A woman near the front stood up. Let her talk, she yelled. Another voice echoed from the back. We're with you, Florence. Soon. The entire studio rumbled with scattered shouts of support. Joy looked around, astonished. Well, looks like the audience has spoken. Sunny approached Florence cautiously. If you're really ready to say this, all of it, we will stand by you. But you need to be sure. Florence nodded, a tear sliding down her cheek. I've never been more sure of anything. In that exact moment, one of the camera operators, a silent observer until now, looked from Florence to Whoopi, then to the panicking producer. His jaw tightened, and very slowly, deliberately, he flipped his camera back on. The red light blinked to life. Another camera clicked on. Then another. The producer spun around, horrified. Turn those off. Turn them off. But it was too late. The audience cheered as the feed reactivated. A single shot dominated the screen. Florence Pugh, standing tall, eyes burning with conviction. She turned toward the cameras, toward the millions watching. And she spoke. I'm not going to name him today, because this is bigger than one man. This is about an entire system that protects people like him and silences people like me. The audience erupted, a wave of clapping, shouting, rising to its feet. Florence continued, voice steadying. But I am done being afraid. I am done being manipulated. And I am done pretending that everything is fine when it isn't. Her voice cracked but didn't break. I deserve better. And so does every woman, every actor, every person who's ever been told to stay quiet to protect someone else's power. Applause shook the studio. Sunny wiped a tear discreetly. Joy nodded solemnly. Sarah placed a supportive hand over her heart. Whoopi looked at her with unmistakable pride. The producer realized he'd lost control. Completely. We're going to be sued, he whispered to no one in particular. Whoopi turned toward him sharply. Let them try. Florence wasn't done. I'm getting help. Real help. And I'm surrounding myself with people who care about me, not my image. And after today, I hope anyone watching who feels controlled or afraid knows they can speak too. She took a deep breath, her first steady breath in what felt like hours. And to the person who threatened me, I'm not scared of you anymore. The audience exploded, standing ovation, cheers, emotional shouts of support. Some people were crying openly. Others clapped until their hands were red. Florence stepped back, overwhelmed, covering her mouth as emotion overtook her. Whoopi wrapped an arm around her shoulders, steadying her. That, Whoopi said, her voice proud and resonant, is the bravest damn thing I've seen on this show. Florence laughed softly through her tears, nodding against her shoulder. The cameras slowly zoomed out as the audience's applause echoed like thunder. And within minutes, even before the show officially ended, social media detonated. Hashtag Florence Pugh. Hashtag The View. Hashtag Let Her Speak. Hashtag Hollywood Control. Hashtag Stand With Florence. Millions of posts. Millions of reactions. Millions of people taking sides, telling stories, sharing experiences, calling out power structures, amplifying her voice. Clips spread like wildfire, especially the one of Whoopi's stunned expression when Florence vowed to expose the truth. It became the defining freeze frame of the moment. News outlets rushed to cover it. Talk shows scrambled to rewrite their segments. PR teams panicked behind closed doors. And the man Florence didn't name? Everyone in the industry knew exactly who she meant. But his silence, his frantic attempts to get ahead of the story, only made things worse for him. Florence Pugh had spoken, and the world was listening. As the final applause faded, Florence turned back to the audience, both in the studio and watching from home. "Thank you," she said, voice soft but steady, "for hearing me." Then she looked directly into the camera, at you. "And if you've ever been silenced, don't stay silent anymore." The feed slowly dipped to black. "And now it's your turn. What do you think about Florence's blow-up, the studio's reaction, and the industry backlash that followed? Tell us in the comments. We read every single one. And if you want more stories like this, more explosive confrontations, more emotional reveals, more behind-the-scenes truth-telling, subscribe to Stage View. Like the video. Drop your thoughts below. Your support keeps these stories alive. And trust me, the next one will be even bigger.